do at least 2 to 3 crops per year.
It was my first attempt, knowing very little, and throwing as much as I could in without really understanding strata and understanding over time, and really not getting the support species to create the biomass that I needed to really boost the metabolism of the system. But over time I've kind of filled in some of those gaps, and it's starting to actually look a little bit more like a row should look. So we're getting there. When we bought the place, and that just fruits all year round constantly. We always have lemons on it. Just there's never a day that there isn't at least 30 or 40 lemons on that tree. We have persimmons which are flowering. This is a fuyu, first flowers this year, which I'm happy about. Super excited. We've got a peach which I grew from cutting actually, and that's doing really well, fruiting as well. Feijoa. This is an orange, really heavy cropper. Can't remember what type because I've got too many scattered around and I don't really remember the varieties of where they are. And this is a mandarin that I have to say is on its last legs. If it doesn't produce good fruit this year, I'm chopping it and grafting, because the fruit is just always really, really small, not very juicy. So that's your last warning, buddy. Yeah. So we've got nectarine in the far corner. Obviously the supports in here are mainly tagasaste and different types of ukes. So those are red gum ukes. Actually, I think most of those are red gum ukes in here. We've got some oak leaf papayas. Obviously they need a pollinator, so there's 2 of them fairly close by. They did flower last year. This year I haven't seen any flowers as yet, but we'll see. Lots of feijoas, some double grafted apples. That's Braeburn and Golden Delicious. You can see that's fruiting. What else have we got? More blueberries scattered around. Some mulberry early hicks, which really never produces any good fruit, so that's on its last legs too. Last warning, buddy. Got some more sugarcane around, Hawera plum, which is doing really well, quite heavy cropper as well. And then a cherry at the end, and that's fruiting for the first time this year, so that's good too. Happy about that. So these were kind of my first experiments of putting in syntropic rows. Let's take a walk down to the actual installs, and we'll go and have a look at the early stuff I've started this year. I've started some new rows, so we'll walk down and through the gate down the bottom, and we can have a look at kind of what a first planting looks like from a support perspective. Just wait for everyone to come through. Okay, so this has been a new couple of rows that I've put in this year. These are mainly deciduous trees. So we've got things like apples and pears and nashi pears and lots of berries. So there's goji berries and Chilean guavas and blueberries. Obviously got a support row of yacon on the side here. And then I'm doing some intercropping of some veggies. So there's probably about 30 or 40 different vegetable seeds just planted in this mid row because I had too many seeds expiring and I just went, off we go. And there they are. So lots of berries, little cherry guavas. You can see some yams in the front here. So just some veggies, obviously, and some main tree lines. There's ukes and tagasaste every kind of metre in the main rows. And then in the midline row, because this is more of a midline row, this has got poplar cuttings, which will basically have a very straight up growing pattern. This is a slightly older area, so these trees are about probably 2 years old, from balk trees of about 2 years old when I planted them, so they're probably about 4 years old, the actual trees. So we've got things like apricots, and we've got some fruit on here for the first time, a whole 3. So There's one of them right there, you can see, and another one up there, and then another one over there. So I'm happy about that. Apricots for the first time. Louisa plums, obviously laden. A couple of them. Another cherry in the background there. Some pears, few pears, and a couple of peaches, paragons, and golden queen. And then yeah, along this row we've got some Japanese raisins and apples. So Monty Surprise, the green, whatever it's called, I can't remember the name of it. No, it's not Granny Smith, it's the Granny, no, not Granny Smith, yeah. No, it's a green apple anyways, I can't remember. Granny Smith, that's the one. Oh, yeah, you might have. And that one there is a Golden Delicious. There's a few pomegranates underneath, and some other bits and pieces, some tagasaste supports, and there are some cherimoya seedlings in there somewhere. So this bank along the left hand side was my planting this year. You can see that I've positioned the rows vertically rather than on contour, and that's from learnings in Brazil, where it is a much easier to maintain rows walking up a hill to the left and right than it is to try and walk behind a row and manage, which I've found definitely on the contour lines. So we'll go down, we'll take a walk down, we'll just look at what the supports and how I've planted those and the first parts that I have planted there. So you'll see obviously this is a tithonia support row and also comfrey support row along this line, and then we've got pineapples as alley crop, and then more comfrey as a support line. This is the newer planted area here, so there's actually not a lot of production plants in here at the moment because what I'm trying to do is speed up the metabolism and create the soil quality and also the canopy that I need in here to protect some of the more expensive fruit trees that I want to put in here eventually. So at the moment we've got the main lines which basically have tagasaste and eucalyptus as the main supports in the midline, and then there's a few things like sunflowers and tomatoes, a couple of little bits and pieces just scattered around, but no actual support trees planted in here yet, although I have put a couple of carobs in there somewhere. But what we've got is in here we've got Queensland arrowroot, which is probably my favorite, I have to say, from a chop and drop perspective because of the moisture content in the leaves. And then we've got comfrey, we've got yacon in here, we've got Jerusalem artichoke in here, we've got bana grass, we've got Tithonia diversifolia, Mexican sunflower, we've got, again, kind of repeated patterns here, right? All the way up. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a lot of biomass that we can feed into the rows to speed up the metabolism of that soil and create a much more inviting soil types for things to grow in, right?
By feed into the rows, you mean cut and drop?
Yeah, chop and drop, yeah. Then we've got some things like myoga ginger in here as well, which is what you eat the flowers on. And some paulownia on the midline here inside the tithonia. So we've got tithonia and then paulownia. And yeah, all of the rows have been planted out with the tagasaste and the eucalyptus, and they're all nightens because nightens do the best here. I've planted probably about 10 different varieties, and nightens are by far the winner for my climate. So in these rows I've started kind of backfilling some of the spaces. So we've got things like nut on here and there, American pawpaw, Lots of pepino scattered around.
So how old are the established eucalyptuses here?
So these were planted 2 years ago. And the older systems were planted 3 years ago. So going into their 4th growing season, these are going into their 3rd growing season.
How big were they when you planted them?
The size, so you can see kind of what they were like. That's what they were like.
It's gone from that to that in
Yep.
2 years.
Yep.
Wow. Is that typical?
Yeah, that's pretty typical for ukes.
And how high are you going to let them go? before you start?
6 meters, and then we'll take the crowns off. And then we basically just allow them to grow out and create the canopy and just keep on pruning them. But we keep them at about a 6 meter height to create the canopy and just recycle that biomass back in. Yeah.
That one's already 7 to 8, I'd say.
Yeah, some of yeah. Yeah.
How will you prune them at 6 metres, like in your scenario here?
Ladders and a harness and a handsaw, because it's better to handsaw them than to use an electric. It's a little bit too, I mean, unless you've got a small electric saw, then it's okay, but generally better to do it by hand with being up high. So yeah, as you can see, that's kind of what the Jerusalem artichoke support rows look like down at the bottom when they actually are a bit more mature. And you can see the amount of biomass that creates. They come up quite a lot earlier than the tithonia does here. So you can see the tithonia rows there are now just starting to get to the same kind of biomass as I get off Jerusalem artichokes, but those have been a lot faster, so I can recycle those earlier and then get another succession over the top.
So the titania's died back over winter here?
Not always, no, not unless they get direct frost.
Yeah.
Yes, but those I cut back at the beginning of spring. They were quite like lengthy branches. They kind of hang, so they hang and then they basically reroot in the ground. So you've got to maintain them. It's not something that you can just leave, because they do spread if you just leave them.
Your pineapples, are they the biggest ones you have here?
Yeah.
I think they probably won't fruit this year, just looking at the size.
No, they won't.
How old are those ones?
Those have been in the ground 2 years.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, probably doing another year anyway.
Yeah, so
You might be right.
we do get quite bad frosts here. Not as bad as we used to get. We used to get, -4, -5 degree frosts, and I was just actually talking to Kevin about it. That now we get like -2 if that. So
Because of the canopy, or
because of climate, just climate, yeah. So global warming.
Yeah, global warming.
Keep coming, really. Let it grow.
Are you growing the Jerusalem artichokes for the green, not for the food particularly? But
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can eat them. They are really healthy for your gut and great crop. But I'm really growing it for biomass.
And so how
so-
often do you chop and drop them?
For Jerusalem artichoke, pretty much only once. They don't take to a really good hard prune and they don't come back. So you kind of grow them and then chop them. But as long as you don't chop them too far down, they will grow again. So if I took about that much off of those, they'll come back and they'll grow back up, right?
Do you
And I
find
can
they
do that
spread
again.
this way? Like, is
Not-
it a bit of a problem?
They do, but the thing is that it's all about maintenance, right? So if you just make sure that when you see them come up, you just mow over them or brush cut them, it stops them from spreading too wide. But yeah, we like the weedy species because they create more biomass for us. So if we want to take a walk down, we can go and have a look down at the kind of lower rows. And here we've got things like pine nuts, mulberries, some figs. We've also got things like almonds and persimmons and pears and more figs.
So in that scenario, those gums will stay. You won't cut them down.
The gums will stay until my kind of emergent food species take the space, and then
If it gets
yeah, and then basically what I'll do in that scenario is basically chop them down real low. They'll sprout out about 3 or 4, you know, new branches. I'll pick the strongest one and leave that to grow up and create another tree and continuously chop and drop, right?
Have you had much luck with coppicing these gums?
I haven't got to a point where
place and it didn't work.
well,
Time of the year?
I've had the redwoods. They definitely do. I've chopped them down and they've come straight back. I'm not so sure about the 19s because I haven't got them big enough where I've had to fully take them down. But yeah,
The theory they work.
in theory they do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I chopped down about 20 of them in Melbourne.
Yeah, so then in between we've obviously got support rows. So again, this is banana grass, this is Queensland arrowroot and tithonia cuttings, which are not, some of them are taking. You can see that there's some growth on most of them actually, so that's pretty good. They'll just take a little bit of time to kind of strengthen their root systems. Down in here we've got Japanese raisin tree. It's going to be the emergent in that row. And again, supports, so it's really about creating as much biomass between the rows as possible and feeding into the systems. Along the banks, I've got things like just different pumpkin types planted in seeds just to try and hold the soil from the digger that I had in here. And then potatoes underneath this row. Bananas, these are all biomass bananas, so these are really just growing for the biomass.
Are they Abyssinian ones?
No, these are Samoan bananas here. So, and then you'll notice that all of the main rows have their support crops in. So we've got Takasaste and 19s every metre basically along all of the rows, all of the support rows, the main rows, which I'll then go and interplant with actual production species, and obviously all of the support species will go in over time. I just don't have a lot of that thing called time, so that's my biggest problem at the moment. So along the water lines we've got lots of poplar and lots of willow types, so various willow types, and that's really to hold that soil together and stop the erosion, because this becomes a waterfall when we have heavy rains, and will literally, like, it is an actual waterfall. Like, it's crazy, yeah. Crazy how much water comes down through that. So along here we've got comfrey as our support row along the front, and then we've got this is mainly a deciduous row, this one here. So we've got things like Chinese quince, we've got almonds, we've got pecans, and we've got hazelnuts, macadamias, different plums, blueberries, strawberries. Free as the supports along the front, tithonia as well, and then there are a few different interesting things in here, like this is a Mexicola avocado, so this is the one that you kind of just eat the whole fruit with the skin on. Black avocado skin. Mostly, well actually all of these bananas are goldfingers in these rows. Mountain papayas, mulberries, this is a pink plum, and then Chatoot mulberries in here. Yeah, again, Japanese raisins, some citrus, lots of potatoes planted underneath all of the bananas, and that's so that I can stack the biomass on top and just have the potatoes keep basically pushing through the biomass layers, and then it just makes it really easy to get in there and just harvest.
What kind of slope are you dealing with here?
This type of slope. I don't know, I haven't really measured it specifically, but yeah, it's not the nicest slope to work on. Hi baby, come on.
Would you have, in hindsight, built this hill like you built that one?
No, because I think that I learned a lot of lessons doing it this way. And I think that I'm yet to actually experience what that feels like. So right at this point, I can't tell you whether I'm going to say that that is a better system than this system. I know that there are some downsides to working this way, and I've experienced those working on it, but I can't tell you that I'm not going to experience other issues there, because it's too new for me. So I know that there's a lot of experimenting going on in Brazil, and a lot of the findings are that it's much easier to work up and down a slope. Again, I haven't experienced that myself, but I definitely will be soon, so I'll let you know. Yeah.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go back round, we'll go down to the sort of older systems.
What's your name, buddy?
This is Torrin.
Oh, Torrin. You met Regan and Ayla? No. Oh, my picture. They look about the same age.
This was, again, this is the 1 year system, so everything from here down was planted last year in November. This was planted the November the year before, this row here. So you can see it's a little bit more mature. Some of the trees are slightly bigger by a year. In here we've got things like avocado again, cherimoya, guava viu, Japanese raisins, some citrus along the back line. There's sugar cane, more citrus and tropical apricots, variegated pineapple, which is looking pretty sad through winter, but it's still alive, so.
Still alive, mine's still looking quite sad. Probably not quite that sad. But...
Yeah. Along here there's more, quite a lot of casimiroa. Also there's rose apple, there's, I mean, you can have a look through, but there's lots of things. There's Hashimoto avocados, there's Suriname cherries, there's lots of loquats, lots of bananas, obviously. All of these front bananas are all blue Java, up to about here. And then the rest are just different types of ladyfingers and B types. Here is my Golden Queen pineapple in there, still quite small, quite a baby. If you look at its strategic positioning, I put it along this back line because the sun basically, rises and sets, and it's basically the sun is on the back line of this. But I will be chopping this fairly shortly. It's probably due a cut now. So lots of different bananas around here. I couldn't even tell you which ones are what right now, because I haven't kept a very good spreadsheet or anything of where things are planted. Lots of citrus in here, mulberries, casimiroa. You see a casimiroa tree's getting quite big. Haven't seen flowers yet, but there's still time. This is Myoga ginger along the front. Yacon is a support. This is all canna lilies and Queensland arrowroot, comfrey, poplar and tithonia in the support row. Lots of mountain papayas and babako in here as well. Obviously the avocados, babacos, there's Davidson plum.
Did you get any more fruit? I think last time we had one fruit.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen any flowers on it this year actually.
Yeah. It's looking nice and healthy though.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
that your biggest one?
Yeah.
You've got?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The poplar are starting to actually put out quite a bit of biomass now, which is nice. Avocados are doing okay. Yeah, we've had fruit probably for the last 2 years on it. So
Is there lots of nests in your food forest?
yeah, lots of birds in here.
Yeah.
Um,
Good country.
yeah. Figs are doing really well. We've got quite a few different varieties of figs in here. We've got Ventura and Miss Williams. What else have we got in here? Panache. There's a bunch of different figs in here. A few underneath the willows, and there's a few others scattered around. Bananas, you can see that there's a little rack up there which is just starting, so those will get a little bit bigger. As the corms get bigger, the fruit racks will get bigger. You'll get more hands on the bananas, but they are still quite young, only being in the ground, 3 years, and me also taking pups out, which then disturbs the corm, puts it back a bit. So now that I've stopped taking pups off of these, they should actually grow stronger, faster, and should get better racks.
Do you think it would be the other way? If you take the pup away, it's giving the energy back to the banana?
Yeah, but I think it's because you're actually cutting into the corm, which then it takes shock, and then it's it takes time for it to recover. Whereas if you're just taking the actual stems off and not cutting into the corm, then that's okay. But the research is at the moment that once bananas fruit, it's better to actually just take the top of the stem off and leave the stem in to decompose, and it actually then makes the next because basically in a syntropic system you're supposed to really manage it down to 3 stems on a banana. You're supposed to have the grandmother, mother, daughter, and you're supposed to basically prune out the others so that you have the strongest kind of clumps and the strongest bananas, because otherwise it's expending energy to keep all of the other stems alive. Obviously I haven't managed these as well as I could. Again, it's all down to time. But that's how you're supposed to, in a syntropic system, manage bananas. But yeah, so the research is that if you do get fruit and you get a bunch, take the top of the banana off and actually just leave the stem to decompose, and your next stem will fruit faster and it'll be more healthy. So that's the research at the moment. So you'll find that yakon's pretty much all along the front lines. This is really the Peruvian ground apple. If you don't know what it is, it's basically like a very watery apple, potato tasting crossed with a carrot kind of thing. Tamarillos in full flower, so these will be dripping with fruit by the end of the growing season. We've got fruit on the loquat for the first time behind you. If you look through the leaves, you'll see them on the other side. So it's just good to see a bit of fruit on the loquat. We've got lacumas in here. Along the back line is mostly macadamia nuts, avocados, and different varieties of feijoa. There are some figs in there as well, and obviously front line of yakon with the main supports of eucalyptus and Tagasaste tree lucerne. But yeah, have a look around, see what you can see. If you've got any questions about anything, yell out and I'll see if I can answer them.
So this time of year should the figs have fruit?
So figs will generally only grow on new growth, so they won't grow on your older growth. You need to actually chop them back every year if you want them to kind of fruit well. I was more growing these for biomass, because I'm going to be chopping these for biomass. Not really trying to get fruit out of them this year. They're a little bit... Figs are weird here. The fruit doesn't seem to get ripe enough within our growing season, so I need to experiment with different ways of potentially opening up more light early for them to get that fruit established. So yeah, lots of tamarillos around, and different types of avocados. So the different type of avos we've got in here, we've got bacon, we've got forte, we've got reeds, we've got Hass, we've got Mexicola, we've got Hashimoto. So we've got lots of different varieties of avocado in here. And I love avocados, so like that's pretty much that was the whole reason for starting this for me personally, was I wanted avocados. So that's what made me plant this to start with, so yeah.
Have a lot of them one day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As you can,
wish for.
yeah, I know, right? As you can see, this is kind of what things looked like before I started. It was mainly gorse and blackberry, and a lot of it has been just basically me manually cutting this stuff out and trying to maintain it over the last 3 to 4 years. So basically, if you look at the gorse, they're almost like trees, right? So they're quite thick. So the first thing I do is basically with a pole saw, and I'll go through and I'll basically chop them at the base and take down all of the thicker branches first. I'll then pull them out and I'll actually put them through the chipper and I'll chip them down, and then I'll get a brush cutter with a bladed brush cutter, and I'll just go through and basically level it as much as I possibly can. At that point, it's about then trying to keep the weeds from growing up through. So if I'm not starting to plant straight away with a support species like tithonia or something that's going to take up that light and drown out anything underneath, then I will use things like black weed mat to basically put over the top and just make sure that nothing grows through until I'm ready to plant in that space. And then it's ground prep, so then it's things like what additives am I going to put in. I generally put in things like horse manure. I'll put in different types of fungi like mycelium, thank you. So I'll put in things like that, and then basically prep the ground, plant my plants, and then mulch over the top. And
Do you find that you're buying much now? That you have all
no,
this nursery?
pretty much I'm now just using what I've got to replicate and basically plant out. So I don't need to buy a lot of stuff. It's only if I don't have something that I like the sound of or want to experiment with. But to be honest, every time I spend money on things that I like the sound of, they die because they don't live in this area.
There's a reason you haven't seen them around the neighbourhood.
Yeah, exactly right. So, you know, and some of the plants out there are ridiculously priced. You know, people are selling things for like $200 for one tropical fruit that you buy and it dies 2 weeks later. So yeah, I don't spend that kind of money anymore. Yeah, for me it's all about...
What's your favourite plant here with
Avocado.
for us, apart from the avocados? Like, what do you look at and you're like, oh, I really like walking past it?
I like all of it, to be honest, but if I had to pick something other than the avocados, it would probably be the Casimiroa. I really like its growth pattern. It's a really nice looking plant. Casimiroa, it's the white sapote. White sapote is the other name for it.
On the table
Yeah.
there. People are probably going home with some.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Nice.
I got one, thank you.
Where are they on your property?
The Casimiroa, we'll go back up and I'll show you. Yep.
And how big do they get?
They do get quite big. They are quite big trees. Yeah. Just keeps growing. Inga beans as well in here, quite a few inga beans all around, mainly because they're a nitrogen fixer. But that's the only reason I really have them in there, because I don't know that they'll become an actual support in the system, because I don't think they'll ever get really big enough and compete enough with the actual supports in here. Because really the tree lucerne, Tagasastes are my high supports, eucalyptus are the emergence, and the lows are pretty much tithonia, yacon and comfrey. So that's pretty much what I'm doing from a strata perspective. Yeah. But I have to say it's a pretty happy system, mostly healthy. I'm sure there's many things I could be doing better, by definitely not saying I'm an expert at all, just experiment and see what happens and yeah, figure it out as we go.